So hello guys, what's up and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me, your girl Barrister Neze, and this is Nezeville. A few videos back, I brought us the sad story of Mrs. Funmilola Adefolalu, a widow and a university lecturer who brought in a 14-year-old girl to assist her around in the house as a help. And a few hours after Joy got into the house, she started stealing indiscriminately. And when Mrs. Fumi couldn't handle Joy's behavior, she asked her to leave. Joy returned to the home of Mrs. Fumi a few days after in company of two of her classmates. They killed her and then went ahead to rob her of her personal belongings. Joy has been apprehended, but her accomplices, the two other boys, are still on the run. In today's video, we will be discussing a number of issues that have now arisen. Her confession, the issue of child labor, and some people's belief that Mrs. Fumi deserves what she got, and whether, according to the Nigerian law, a 14-year-old can be held accountable for murder. We will discuss all of these extensively. Don't fail to watch the video till the end because there are a pack of gems that you need to know. Before we proceed, if you haven't subscribed, do hit the subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications so you can be aware whenever we bring these amazing videos to you. Let us proceed. Well, in Joy's confession, she claims that it wasn't her intention to kill Mrs. Fumi, that she just wanted her and her friends to beat up Mrs. Fumi mercilessly and teach her a lesson. It was her accomplices' idea that they eliminate Mrs. Fumi. Let us hear straight from the horse's mouth.
So how long did you stay with her?
2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks.
So during that time, what happened?
What happened between you
What
and the
happened
madam?
between you and her? Why did she send you off?
That was because I was stealing her money.
Okay. So on that fateful day, what happened?
Me and some other guys went to her house, and our intention was to beat her and deal with her. But one of them that was called Walex was with knife, so he was one that stabbed her.
So you are saying the stabbing was by mistake? It was not your intention?
What was your reason of going to her house with Rolex and Smart?
To beat her up.
To beat her up because she sent you out of her house.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on getting there, what transpired?
It transpired to Walex stabbing her.
What did you tell her first on entering the house?
I just told her that I just came to see her. Then we started talking. So it was from there Walex and Smart came.
So what did Rolex and Smart say before doing the act?
They didn't say anything, just started beating her.
They started beating her. So what did Smart and Rolex say before stabbing her? What was their reason of stabbing her?
They said that they told me that if they don't stab her, that she's going to report us and they're going to take her. That was the reason why Wallace stabbed her.
So sad. Well, the first bone of contention that has now come up is the issue of having a minor as a help. And on that, two very strong schools of thoughts have been formed, both with very compelling arguments. I beseech us to have an open mind and weigh these different points dispassionately. The first school of thought greatly condemned Mrs. Fumi for using a 14-year-old girl as a maid. They were like, there is a legal age for these kinds of jobs, for any job at all, and that is 18. That is the legal age for employment. So why didn't Mrs. Fumi seek the services of an adult? Why did she need to take in a child as a help? They have called her a manipulator. Some people even say, oh yes, she took in the child so she can exploit her and pay her less because it's going to cost so much more to employ an adult. According to this set of people, employing a child below 18 is child labor, it's child abuse, and just because it's rampant does not make it okay. They were like, a 14-year-old girl cannot even completely handle her affairs, talk less of handling the affairs of another person. And Mrs. Fumi is learned. She is a professor. She's educated. She should have known better. They insist that there is no excuse whatsoever in the world having a 14-year-old as a domestic staff. And somehow, Mrs. Fumi brought this misfortune upon herself. Now, that is on the one hand. On the other hand, we have these set of people who like to refer themselves as practical realists. They have laughed in African factuality. They have admitted that yes, of course, there are the child rights laws and the child rights acts and all of those legislation which were lifted verbatim from Western countries and adopted into our laws. Lifted from countries that have a structure, lifted from countries that have a system, lifted from countries that work. Now we are shouting child labor and child act and child law with countries where people give birth to the number of children that they can cater to, with countries where the government is responsible for the well-being, the welfare, the health, the education of children. And we are comparing the situation to a country like Nigeria. We are comparing that situation with countries that are totally different. They painted a scenario. They argue that many of these children come from completely impoverished homes. Their father, jobless drunks, living in abject penury, and their mother maybe sells herbs in the markets, making 1,000 naira a day with 7 or 6 children at home. This is painting real life situations, not appealing textbook words. This is reality. At 7, these children eat once a day and have started babysitting 3 of their younger ones while their mothers are in the markets. At that age, they hawk, they cook, they go to the markets, they fetch water from miles away, carry firewoods on their heads. Many of them do not even go to school. Go to Google. Google is your friend. And a few of them that do go to dilapidated public schools where they only attend classes twice a week and sit down on the floor to take lectures. These children live in much worse, more deplorable conditions in their own homes, in the villages, engaging in even harder labor with no parental care, no electricity, 8 people in one room sleeping on the bare floor. Many of them grow up to watch their fathers beat up their mothers because she denied them sex or money. They can't even afford soap to shower, and when you come in contact with them, the stench and the body odor is real. It's not like they were fine and okay and then got plucked out of their family and sent to go and live with somebody as a help. Matter of factly, no parents will let their children off if they had the resources and ability to cater to them. Many of these girls, due to lack of guidance and poverty, end up getting pregnant at 15, at 14, and without a proper marriage, begin living with that man who got them pregnant and then start having children, and the cycle gets repeated. So many times, the parents of these children even beg people to please take their children and assist raise them, as they are incapable of discharging those parental duties. Now, some of these children fall in the hands of bad people, wicked women, evil aunties that maltreat them, beat them, injure them, starve them, and treat them like trash. While in some other instances, these children fall in the hands of good women who care for them. Today's comparison, according to this school of thoughts, is their homes vis-a-vis living with these good madams. So for those who end up with kind women, these women care for them, send them to school, or help them to learn a trade or a handwork. They instill morals, the fear of God, and the knowledge of God in them. They start eating 3 times a day. Some of them, in less than 1 month after they leave the village, the transformation, the body change, the weight gain, the skin change is real. They start getting exposure, watching television, seeing things that they were not privy to seeing before they came there. Even the way they speak and communicate changes most of the times. They start dressing well, exposed to the comforts and life that their own parents couldn't afford to give them. And what do they do in turn as these house girls or house helps or maid? Not a quarter of what they used to do back home. House chores. In this case, they are not sent to hawk or to carry heavy metal. House chores. Sweep the house, wash the plates, mop around, keep the surroundings clean. Things that a child of that age will typically do in their own house. But just because she is in another person's house, we scream and pull out the child slavery card. To this set of people, this is the height of delusion. They argue that we cannot join Europe and America and these developed countries where children typically are taken care of by the government and apply it to our situation where many of these children are living in even worse situations. Many of these children that live in these good places, even when you tell them that you are sending them back home, they start crying and begging you because they know that they are better off in your house. They condemn these other set of people for sitting behind their keypads and labeling it child labor. As our situation, our peculiarities, and our environment is completely different. They believe that Mrs. Funmi did no wrong, taking joy in that she might as well have been an adopted child or a grandchild living with her grandmother. But it only begins to look repulsive when you term it domestic staff, house help. But when the agreement was that Mrs. Funmi was supposed to care for Joy, send her to school, give her a better life that she wouldn't have gotten if she wasn't there, in exchange for doing domestic chores, that is not out of line in the African setting. They argue that it was clear, crystal clear, that Mrs. Funmi was not wicked to this girl. She admitted on her own volition that the fault was from her, that she was the one stealing. She never made mention that Mrs. Funmi beat her up or maltreated her. She took the blame for why Mrs. Funmi had to ask her to leave. So it's not like Mrs. Funmi was a wicked madam. Besides, if Mrs. Funmi was wicked and had a heart of stone and they parted in a very ugly way, will Mrs. Funmi have opened the door to let her in? Is it possible for you to have maltreated a house help, starved her, and when she leaves, she comes back to your house and you open the gate and the door and your arms for her? It is not possible. They argue that this is not Nollywood. This is real life, where good deeds can be paid back with evil. And it is not arithmetically cast on stone that whenever a house help behaves in an evil fashion, it is because of her madam has been wicked to her. Are you sure that the madam has not been wicked to her? Sometimes these helps reward kindness with evil. So these are the two schools of thoughts and the arguments that have broken down in this matter. Do analyze it critically and logically and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Before this video comes to an end, let us briefly analyze the possibility of murder being committed by a 14-year-old in northern Nigeria, and of course her possible fate. Crimes in northern Nigeria are covered and regulated from a separate law from that in southern Nigeria, and for northern Nigeria, the law that regulates crimes is called the Penal Code. And under the Penal Code, ages 7 and 12 are very, very crucial. Let us read this section. Section 50 of the Penal Code says, no act is an offense which is done by a child under 7 years of age. So regardless of what a 7-year-old does, did he shoot somebody, did he kill somebody, did he do anything in the world, such act cannot be considered an offense, and it is immaterial if you can prove that the child had knowledge of what he or she was doing. The court will not even give room for such arguments. It is a no-brainer. A child under 7 is incapable of having the mental capacity to commit crime. They are always innocent. That is what the Penal Code says. Now let us take this other line. The second line says, no act is an offense which is done by a child above 7 years of age but under 12, the ages 7 to 12, who has not attained sufficient maturity of understanding to judge the nature and consequences of the act. I would explain. When the child is below 7, whether the child knows what he's doing or not will not be considered. Even if that child shows high level of maturity and anybody can infer that that child knew that what he was doing or she was doing was wrong, according to the law, that child is innocent. He cannot be held accountable for any crime. But if that child is above 7 but below 12, then the issue of proving understanding now comes into play. So there can be an argument. There's no automatic assumption of innocence and there is no automatic assumption of knowledge. So it is now for the prosecutors to prove that this child at 11 should know that taking a gun and shooting somebody is bad. So it now becomes an argument, and the strength of the evidence as well as the prosecution's case will now determine whether that child can be held accountable for that offense. So by implication, according to the penal code, anybody above 12 can be held 100% accountable for the crime, because these presumptions stop at the age of 12. So in this case, at the age of 14, there is a great likelihood that she will be held accountable for the offense of murder. Recall the case of Wasila Tasiu, the 14-year-old northern child bride who poisoned and killed her almost 40-year-old husband only a few hours after their wedding. She put rat poison in his food the next day after the night of their wedding. And despite many human rights activists and organizations coming in to wade in on the matter, Kano State government, through its prosecutors, insisted on the death penalty for 14-year-old Wasila. Sad case, very sad case. So yes, in northern Nigeria, a minor can be charged to court for murder despite she's not up to 18. So let us see how this particular case goes. I also earnestly hope that her accomplices, these boys, Smart and Walex, who joined her in eliminating Mrs. Funmilola, I do hope that they are caught, because they're still on the loose and made to face the full wrath of the law. I'll keep you guys updated as this case progresses. So guys, we have come to the end of today's very enlightening video. Don't forget to drop your arguments, your feelings, your thoughts, your sentiments down in the comment section. If you're new here or if you have been watching without subscribing, don't fail to hit the subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, drop your thoughts in the comment section, turn on your bell notifications and stay glued, because we have so much more coming your way. It's me, your girl Barrister Neze, and this is Nezeville. I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye.